Poor Olivia, couldn't even keep her job, my brother mocked at the shareholders meeting. Then the new owner walked in. "Hello, sister," I said, holding the acquisition papers. The Madison Group's annual shareholders meeting always felt more like a family reunion from hell. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead in the grand conference room as shareholders filed in, their whispers echoing off marble walls. I sat in the back row, smoothing my simple black dress, not designer like the other women's, but elegant in its own way. "Well, look who decided to grace us with her presence." My brother James's voice dripped with mockery as he approached. "The prodigal daughter returns." I kept my expression neutral, though my hands tightened around the leather portfolio in my lap. Inside were documents worth more than the building we sat in. But James didn't need to know that. Not yet. "Hello, James," I said quietly. "How's the company?" He straightened his Airm's tie, a smirk playing at his lips. "Wouldn't you like to know, though? I suppose you keep up with our stock price from your what are you doing these days? Consulting." Before I could respond, our sister Victoria joined us, her Louboutins clicking against the marble floor. "Olivia, what a surprise. I didn't think you could afford the trip back to New York on your current salary." 5 years ago, their words would have cut deep. Back then, I was the family disappointment, the Madison who couldn't handle the pressure working at the family firm, the one who had a nervous breakdown and quit her VP position to find herself. At least that's how they told the story. The truth was considerably different. "Just wanted to see how everything's going," I said mildly. "Big changes ahead from what I hear." Victoria's perfectly penciled eyebrows rose. "Oh, and what would you know about that?" "More than you can imagine," I thought, but kept quiet. Instead, I watched my father take the podium, his silver hair gleaming under the chandeliers. Harrison Madison III, CEO of Madison Group, looking every inch the corporate titan he believed himself to be. "Welcome, shareholders." His voice boomed through the room. "Today marks a historic moment for Madison Group." I tuned out his usual platitudes, thinking back to the day everything changed. I was working late as usual when I discovered the discrepancies. Small at first, rounding errors in the books, mysterious consultancy fees, offshore accounts that didn't quite add up. But as I dug deeper, the truth emerged. My father and brothers had been cooking the books for years. When I confronted them, they gave me 2 choices. Keep quiet and take a promotion or leave with nothing. I chose option 3. I quit publicly, letting them spin whatever story they wanted. Let them call me weak, unstable, unable to handle the pressure. Meanwhile, I took everything I discovered to build something of my own. Atlas Capital was born in a tiny office in Singapore, far from my family's watchful eyes. I started small, making careful investments, building connections. Every time I heard about my family mocking my failure, I channeled that energy into growth. 5 years later, Atlas Capital managed more assets than Madison Group's entire portfolio. Not that anyone knew I was behind it. I operated through layers of holding companies and shell corporations, keeping my name off every document. My father's voice drew me back to the present, which brings me to today's announcement. As you know, Madison Group has faced some challenges in recent quarters. Challenges, I suppressed a smile. He meant the SEC investigation I'd quietly triggered 6 months ago, the one that had sent their stock price plummeting. But I'm pleased to announce we've received a generous acquisition offer from Atlas Capital. Their representative will be here shortly, too. The conference room doors opened and my assistant Thomas walked in. "Right on cue, poor Olivia," James whispered loudly enough for nearby shareholders to hear. "Couldn't even keep her job here. Now she has to watch us succeed from the sidelines." Victoria laughed, the sound like breaking glass. "At least she had the sense to show up today. Maybe she'll learn something about real business." I checked my watch. In exactly 3 minutes, they'd learn what real business looked like. Thomas approached the podium, handing my father a folder. Even from the back row, I could see his hands shaking slightly as he reviewed the documents. "These terms," he looked up, confusion clouding his features. "They're different from what we discussed." "The original terms were provisional," Thomas replied smoothly. "The final offer is non-negotiable." I watched my father's face pale as he read further. The new terms were brutal fare, but designed to strip him and my brothers of any real power in the company they thought they'd run forever. James snatched the papers from our father's hands, his arrogant smile faltering as he read. "This is ridiculous. Who do they think they are?" "Atlas Capital Co. is very particular about terms," Thomas said, his eyes meeting mine briefly. Speaking of which, that was my cue. I stood smoothing my dress as I walked toward the podium. The click of my heels against marble seemed to echo through the suddenly silent room. "Hello, Father," I said calmly. "I believe you were about to introduce the new owner of Madison Group." The blood drained from his face as understanding dawned. Behind him, James dropped the acquisition papers. Victoria's perfectly painted mouth fell open. "No," my father whispered. "It's not possible." I reached into my portfolio and pulled out another set of documents. "Actually, it is. Atlas Capital is ready to proceed with the acquisition, unless, of course, you'd prefer I share some interesting historical documents with the SSE. The room erupted in whispers. Shareholders leaned forward in their seats, sensing blood in the water. My father gripped the podium so hard his knuckles turned white. "You wouldn't dare," James hissed. "You'd destroy everything." I turned to face the shareholders, channeling every lesson about authority my father had ever taught me. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to properly introduce myself. I'm Olivia Madison, CEO of Atlas Capital, and I believe we have some changes to discuss. The silence that followed was deafening. In that moment, 5 years of careful planning, of working in the shadows while they mocked my failure, crystallized into perfect victory. But this wasn't just about revenge. This was about justice for every employee they'd exploited, every investor they deceived, every rule they'd broken believing their name put them above the law. Now, I said, taking my father's place at the podium. Shall we begin? The next hour passed in a blur of legal documents, shareholder questions, and the hollow sound of my family's empire crumbling. Now you can watch the second part by pressing share and more.